If control really helped, trying harder wouldn't feel so heavy. But for many people, the opposite happens. The more they try to keep things together, the heavier it feels. Watching this won't teach you how to control less. It will help you see why control starts in the first place, so you stop treating it as a personal failure. And when that pressure drops, movement becomes possible again, without forcing it. Control isn't a personality trait. It's not discipline. And it's not something you decide to have. Control shows up when something starts to feel unstable. Not dramatic, not dangerous, just slightly unpredictable. A moment where the system can't quite tell what comes next. And when that happens, the body doesn't wait for understanding. It tightens. It narrows. It starts holding things together. That's control. Most people think control comes from the mind, but you feel it much earlier. In the jaw, in the shoulders, in the way the breath stops moving. You're not deciding anything. The system is just trying to stay intact. This is why trying to relax doesn't work, and why telling yourself to let go usually makes things tighter. Because control isn't the problem. It's the system's answer to pressure. Once you see that, something shifts. Not relief yet, but orientation. You stop fighting control and start noticing what made it necessary. Safety isn't a feeling, and it's not something you convince yourself of. You don't become safe because you tell yourself that everything is fine. Safety appears when the system can tell what comes next. Not clearly, not perfectly, just enough to stay oriented. That's what the system is constantly doing. Checking, is this familiar? Is this coherent? Does this still make sense in my body? When those answers are mostly yes, the system loosens. Breath moves. Attention widens. Movement feels possible without effort. But when those answers become unclear, when things start changing faster than the system can track, safety doesn't disappear. It gets replaced by control. Control is predictable, tight, narrow, but familiar. And for the system, familiar always feels safer than uncertain. This is why trying to force change often backfires. The system isn't resisting you. It's protecting continuity. Once you see safety this way, control stops looking like a flaw. It starts making sense. Change isn't the problem. Uncertainty is. Most people think they get tense because something is difficult. But the system tightens much earlier than that. It tightens when the next moment stops being obvious. Even good change does this. New plans, new insight, new direction. Anything that shifts the usual sequence of moments. From the outside, it looks like resistance. From the inside, it feels like holding on. The system isn't asking, "Is this change good?" It's asking, "Can I predict what happens next?" When the answer is unclear, control steps in. Not to stop change, but to slow it down. Slowing things down gives the system something familiar to hold. Tension, fixation, narrow focus. Not comfortable, but predictable. This is why pushing harder often makes change stall. The system feels rushed before it feels ready. Nothing is wrong with you at that moment. The system is simply trying to buy time. And sometimes, the most helpful thing isn't insight. It's giving the system a moment where nothing needs to be predicted. Just enough space to stop holding. Nothing needs to change right now. You don't need to understand anything. And you don't need to let go. Just notice that this moment is already happening on its own. Breathing is happening. Sounds are happening. The body is already here. You don't have to follow any of it. You can let it pass without tracking. For a few moments, nothing needs to be predicted. No next step. No outcome. No correction. If something loosens, that's fine. If nothing does, that's also fine. This isn't a pause you created. It's one that was already available. The system doesn't need instructions here. It just notices that nothing is being asked of it. And sometimes, that's enough to stop holding. You might notice that nothing dramatic happened. No insight. No release. No clear shift you can point to. And yet, something may feel slightly less held. Not open. Not relaxed. Just not as tight. That's usually how regulation shows up. Quietly. Without announcement. The system doesn't switch states. It eases between them. When nothing is demanded, nothing needs to be defended. And control, for a moment, loses its job. Not because you stopped it, but because it wasn't needed right then. This is important. Control doesn't step back when you fight it. It steps back when the system has enough orientation to move on its own. This is why clarity often comes after the body settles, not before. Nothing here needs to be repeated. Nothing needs to be practiced. The system remembers this state without effort. Because it's not new, it's familiar. You don't need to take anything from this. Nothing here was meant to be used. If something stayed with you, let it stay. If nothing did, that's fine too. Control will return when it needs to. And it will step back again when the system has enough ground to move. You don't have to remember any of this. The body already does. Movement doesn't begin when you decide. It begins when nothing is being held in place. That moment doesn't need your help. It arrives on its own.